And like, what's the question? Like, what am I like answering?
Ready?
Yeah.
Basically, what do you love about Christmas?
Well, most of my memories are really in Spanish, so is it okay if we do this in Spanish?
Yeah, go for it. We'll do subtitles.
Okay.
All right, and action.
When I was 13 years old, I had a blue Sears 10-speed bike, and I would ride that bike everywhere. I loved that bike, and one day we went bowling in Montebello in East LA, and someone cut the lock and stole my bike. A new bike cost $88.97 at Sears, which was all the money in the world to me. I started saving, but it was hard to get a job because a job for a kid my age needed a bike for transportation. On Christmas morning, my parents left a note under the tree for me to look in the backyard, where I found a brand new blue Sears 10-speed bike. I'll never forget that because I knew how big of a sacrifice it was for my parents.
Allá en Chile la tradición es que uno se queda hasta las 12 de la noche del día 24 con su familia comiendo y todo. Y después de las 12 uno ya empieza a abrir los regalos. Ya cuando eran mayores, cuando teníamos quizás 14, 15 años, recuerdo participando en el coro de la iglesia. Yo canto horrible. Los ensayos eran una chacota, más que nada nos dedicábamos a reírnos. Más de alguna vez nos retaron por reírnos mucho, pero lo pasábamos bien. Entre esos amigos que hice en ese tiempo está la Raquel. Los lazos de amistad y de amor que se forjan en esos momentos, todavía siguen con muchos de mis amigos. Y también a esos amigos los considero hermanos desde toda una vida.
Every year after Thanksgiving, we have dinner on Thursday, and then Friday we break down all the Thanksgiving decorations and we put up Christmas. My grandma, she has a nativity set, and I always set it up. Like, I set it up in the same spot every year and the same positions. I put all the different people in the nativity scene, and you know, it used to take me a really long time when I was younger. Like, it would take me like 2 hours because everything had to be perfect. But now that I have like my whole system down, it takes me like 10 or 15 minutes. But it's super special for me because it's just a tradition that I've had every single year. And my grandma, she always like saves it for last, and she gets it out of the box for me and sets it up in the place, and then I put it all together. And yeah. Hi, I'm Kara Cordell, and I love Christmas.
Hi, my name is Hector Ramirez, and I love Christmas.
Hi, I'm Paul Matsumoto, and I love Christmas.
If I lived in this area, this is a church that I would attend. So if you're new, if you're checking this out for the first time, welcome. I hope that you keep on coming back. There's a lot of good reasons to come back and check this out. We'll talk about the sermon series here in a second, but later on tonight, we've got a coffee house that's going to be cool, and it's going to get you in the season, and that's a great place to invite somebody to if you are an attender here, if you're a member here, if this is where you park and call home. And then also, we have a couple Christmas Eve services on December 24th, so that's also a great time to invite somebody, because most studies show that when you invite somebody that you know to Christmas or Easter, usually they'll say yes, as opposed to other times during the year. So you need to leverage that. But today is a great Sunday to be here, especially if you're joining us for the first time. We are beginning a new sermon series called I Love Christmas. And there are so many different reasons why people say that they love Christmas. But really what Pastor Rob and the team wanted to do here was to focus in on some of the big reasons why you and I should love Christmas. And really, you know, Christmas can get lost in consumerism and everything else. But there are just some basic elements we should always keep in mind. And I know that Pastor Rob wants to bring these elements out. And so as I talk about this, it's going to sound like I'm contradictory to everything that I just said, but I'm going to describe fourth grade Caleb to you, and you are going to judge fourth grade Caleb. And that's completely okay, because I can judge who you were in the fourth grade too, and we can compare notes, right? When I was in the fourth grade, one of my favorite things about Christmas was getting presents, okay? I wasn't a Christian. Now, Jesus, little baby Jesus, is my favorite thing about Christmas, okay? Second favorite thing is getting presents and receiving them. Some of you are like, well, that's selfish. I'll own that. It's a good thing I'm saved, right? I can own that. But at the same time, you know why I also like getting gifts? I don't like gift cards that much. I mean, I'll take it. You know, you want to give me one right now, I'll take it. But I love gifts when somebody gives me something, because they took time out of their schedule to go buy something. They took time out of their schedule to think about me and what I would want, or they took time out to make something for me. That's one of the reasons why I love presents. And I'm all in on holidays. When I was in the 4th grade and elementary school, I used to make my own Halloween costumes. I wouldn't go buy one. I would make one. It would be a Kaltenbach original. And then at the same time, like for Thanksgiving, back then I did what I still do today. I don't eat breakfast and I don't eat lunch on Thanksgiving Day. And when it's time to eat dinner, I put on my stretchy pants. Okay, and I get some wet naps, and I just go to town eating turkey, and I have the wet naps when I get the meat sweats, and I start kind of telling myself off like I'm preaching a big sermon or something. Okay, and for Christmas, when I was a kid, I used to give people lists of what I wanted, and I would divide up the list. And so I'd give my dad some, and my mom and her partner in Kansas City some, cousins, aunts, uncles, and everything like that. And I usually gave my parents like 3 or 4 things that I really, really wanted. And I remember this one Christmas in the 4th grade, I could not wait to get up and to see what I got underneath the tree, because, there's just some excitement there. And I remember I got up, and I ran to the tree. My dad was still asleep. And underneath the tree, there was one gift. One. And again, I said, don't judge me now, judge me back then, okay? One gift, and it was like a square box, about this big or something like that. And I was like, that does not look like a video game. It doesn't look like Super Mario Brothers 2. That does not look like He-Man action figures. If you understand what I'm talking about, you know that you're dated just like I am. And so I went back and I got in bed and waited for my dad to get up. And then he got up, and we went underneath the tree to open presents, because I'd gotten him a couple of gifts, that 4th graders or elementary age kids get their parents or make for them. And I opened up my gift first, and I unwrapped it. And I unwrapped a piggy bank. And it wasn't just like a piggy bank. It was like a safe deposit box where you put in your coins, and it had different like locks and knobs that you would turn to open it up and everything. It looked like Benjamin Franklin had made it, and it smelled like it too. And I got to admit, when I first opened it, I was kind of disappointed. I was like, but I hadn't expressed that yet. And I looked up at my dad. He had this look on his face, like in anticipation, like hoping that I would like it. He was kind of like, like when you try something somebody just made, eat some food, and you're like, great, even though it's not. No, but I look at it, and I'm like, I've seen that before. Where have I seen that? And it wasn't around the house. And then I thought, I've seen it in my dad's office where he taught college. And it dawned on me. The fact that I've seen it before, where I saw it in my dad's expression, my parents didn't make a ton of money. And that Christmas was the first Christmas that my dad didn't have enough money to buy me a Christmas present or anything for Christmas. So he went and he got something that he thought that I wouldn't recognize and wrapped it up and gave it to me. And in that moment, I went from feeling disappointed to actually feeling grateful. Christmas just meant a lot more that year, because in that moment, I just realized how much my dad loved me and how much what he was willing to do to make sure that I had something to open on Christmas. And I looked up at him, and his expression was still anticipation. And I looked at him, I said, Dad, thank you so much. I really love this. And you know what? I hate Snoopy. I love this right here. I'm going to start using this. And he got this look on his face, and it's just like, yes, he felt accomplished. He felt excited. It was one of the best Christmases ever. You see, here's the deal. You can tell a lot about a person by how they look at you, right? Like some of you right now, you're looking at me in the way a deer looks into the headlights before it gets hit by a car. You're looking at me like, huh? And like my wife, I love her. And her family, they're very expressive. They're very Latina expressive, okay? And when she can get upset and start talking to me in Spanish. And I'm like, I do not speak Spanish. I don't even understand what you're talking about. And her abuela, she opens up a gift, and she doesn't like it. Here's her expression. She looks at you. She's like, que feo. Throws it back. I'm like, okay, honey, where's the receipt on that one, huh? You can tell a lot about a person by their expression, right? You could tell a lot. If you come home and you see your spouse there or you see your kids there, you can tell by their expression if they've had a good day or a bad day some of the times, right? Or some of the times you can tell if they're hiding something. Husbands, have you ever been in a conversation with your wife or attempted to start one? You're like, what's wrong? Are you okay? She's like, fine. No, you're not. And I know I need to ask why. And I know I'm going to get in trouble because I don't know why yet. Right? You can tell by the expression some of the times. About a month ago, I was working with a couple of churches and organizations in Denver and Colorado for a few days. And I was there on a Friday, and I was in Colorado Springs working with this Christian organization, and my wife and kids were actually in Disneyland that day. And so my wife ends up calling me at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm in a meeting, and she called me 2 times in a row. It's kind of our signal, hey, pick up. And so I get up and say, excuse me. I walk outside in the brisk Colorado air, answer the phone, and it's my 12-year-old son. And I said, buddy, what's going on? Because it sounded like he was crying. And he said, Daddy, Mommy passed out here at Disneyland, and Rachel and I don't know what to do. People who were watching me from the meeting said that my expression just went like, you can imagine, right? And so I said, buddy, first of all, thank you for calling Daddy. You did the right thing. I said, is your little sister nearby? He's like, yeah. I said, take her hand. I want you to stay by Mommy. And he's like, do you want us to go find somebody? I said, no. Disneyland is like the CIA. They're big brothers. They have cameras everywhere. I said, trust me. Trust Daddy. Somebody will be there. Just stay on the phone with me. And literally within 30 seconds of him calling, there were already cast members, staff members, and a nurse that had gathered around my wife and kids. And within 75 seconds of the phone call, she was up. And later on, we found out that she had food poisoning. Wasn't anything serious. And she already has some stomach issues. So food poisoning really hits her hard. But when she woke up and when I could hear her voice, you got to know that my expression went from this to, it's like, wow, I lost 2 years of my life right there. You can tell a lot by the expression. And here's the deal. When we are in times of need, when we feel like our needs are not being provided, when we feel guilty about something, when we need forgiveness, when we feel like we just need somebody to listen, when we feel like we need somebody to just care a little bit, the way somebody looks at us matters a lot. And this time of year, some of us are dreading it. Some of you are excited about it. Some of you are dreading it. Some of you are like, okay, I'm spending time with people that I would not spend time with except for the fact that we share DNA. We hung out at Thanksgiving. 30 days later, we're getting together. Who is the genius that put these 2 holidays so close together? Should have celebrated Thanksgiving in June, right? And there are just some people that you're going to spend money that you don't have to go hang out with them. And some people are going to come over your house and you're going to feel uncomfortable. And you're just kind of dreading it. You're like, I could put on a happy face when they walk in. When Uncle Bob walks in, it's like, hey, Uncle Bob just said, the way somebody looks at you, it really matters a lot, depending on the life circumstance that you're in. And today, what I want to assure you is I want to tell you something, and some of you are not going to believe this because of your past experiences or your current circumstances and what's going on right now. But I need you to hear me on this, okay? Everything's going to be okay. Notice I didn't say everything's going to turn out the way you want it to and in the time. But in the end, eventually, everything will be okay. And that's one of the biggest things that Christmas reminds us of. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing this sermon series, I Love Christmas. And so I want to really drill that home with you that everything's going to be okay and that there is somebody that you can look to. There is somebody whose expressions really reflect how they feel about you, and we're going to talk about that person today. And some of you who go to church on a regular basis, or maybe you've seen movies like Home Alone or other movies where church takes place in the movie, you think, I know what this is now. Everybody take your Bibles and turn to Luke chapter 1 or Luke chapter 2 or Matthew chapter 1. No, we're not even going to be in the New Testament. We're going old school today. We're going all the way back in the Old Testament. And we're going to go back and we're going to listen to some of the words of this prophet, what we would call a prophet or a preacher back in the Old Testament days. His name is Isaiah. And Isaiah, by today's terms of a successful pastor or preacher, would not be considered a successful pastor or preacher. Because he showed up into Israel when God's people were divided. Israel was in the north, and some of God's people formed a group down here called Judah. They were divided, They had enemies like the Assyrians coming against them, and God's people kept on moving away from God, and God said, if you don't come back to me, you're going to the woodshed. If you don't come back to me, you're going to the woodshed. And so like the first 15 chapters of Isaiah is Isaiah really scolding them and telling them that God is about ready to take you to the woodshed times 100. You're not going to like it. And God is going to take out the Assyrians at the same time. Okay? He's not the guy that you'd invite to preach at a revival. You don't want him speaking at a baby dedication service. Shows up, Isaiah's like, y'all, some of you guys are going to get killed. Some of you guys are going to get taken to the woodshed. Okay? That's what God says. Bless this baby. Amen. Like, wow, glad I invited that guy. But what's really cool is that throughout like the first 15 chapters of Isaiah, like God sprinkles little verses and passages of hope. It's kind of like when you get in trouble, but somebody kind of tells you, hey, you know, this is going to happen, but you can have hope because of this. You're going to learn this. I'm going to be there for this. And it's almost like when something bad happens, you want hope, and God is giving them that hope through Isaiah, even though he's warning them about what's coming. And as a matter of fact, all throughout Isaiah's book, there's so much hope, and so much of it points to Jesus that some biblical scholars call it the fifth gospel. But specifically what we're going to look at today, we're just going to look at 2 verses, but these 2 verses are huge. So much in these 2 verses, so much incredible stuff that you and I need to wrap our minds around. And so if you have your Bibles or your mobile devices, you can turn to Isaiah 9, and if you don't, I'm going to read the words to you, and you can just listen. We're also going to have the words on the screen. But we're going to see how we can get that face, and we're going to see somebody that we can look to when things are not going our way. So in Isaiah chapter 9, beginning with verse 6, the first part of verse 6 says, "For to us a child is born, and to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders." And so God starts out speaking through Isaiah, and he says, for us, a child is born, and to us, a son is given. And some of you, you've heard this in Handel's The Messiah, right? I'm not going to try to sing to you because I actually want you to come back next week and hear Pastor Rob preach the second part of this sermon. If you ever want to close down this church, I'll sing Handel's Messiah to you. I promise you won't come back ever. But at the same time, when you look at this, and it says, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given, okay, this was what was called a messianic text. Okay, people back in Isaiah's day and people back in Jesus' day in the first century, they both believed that passages and verses like this described the coming Messiah. Or in Hebrew, it means anointed one. In Greek, that word is Christ, and it means anointed one. That one day God would send his representative that would come down to earth, and he would make everything right. And he would bring excitement, and he would right all the wrongs and everything like that. But you see, back when Isaiah was reading this, when he was preaching this, people really didn't know if this was a messianic passage or not. They were hearing it for the first time. And Isaiah says, hey, there's a guy coming, and he's going to be born, and he's going to be given to us by God, and the government will be on his shoulders. And the Hebrew imagery right here for the government on his shoulders paints the picture of a king or a queen wearing a royal robe. And it's symbolic of whoever this is going to carry the authority of all the governments in the world. That's how powerful this individual is going to be. Now, that didn't exactly, when they heard this for the first time, give them peace or comfort. Because I don't know if you've noticed this. I don't know if you noticed this. Just because somebody has authority doesn't mean they have the integrity to go along with it. Okay? There were a lot of kings that God allowed in the Old Testament days to be kings who had a lot of authority, but they didn't have a lot of compassion, and they didn't care about people. But God still allowed them to be kings for whatever reason. And eventually, when God was done with them, he took them out. He got rid of them and brought somebody else in. I mean, come on, some of you have been there, right? Have you ever worked for a boss where you're like, the man or the woman has the title boss, but when it comes down to it, you're like, oh my gosh, this person's going to talk to me about leadership? This person's going to talk to me about how to treat people? You see, that's why I think it's so important that the authority we possess should never outweigh the character that we have. that our character should always be greater than any kind of authority that we possess. So what is this king going to look like who carries the government on his shoulders? And Isaiah gives the description in the last part of verse 6. He says, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And you see, this is the part where they said, okay, we're talking about the messianic figure. We're talking about the anointed one that one day God is going to bring. Because these are all descriptions of God right here. Wonderful Counselor. That whoever this is, whoever this king is, he is going to be all-knowing. He's going to know everything that was, everything that is happening, everything that will happen. And by the way, let me go a step further. He's going to know everything that could have happened but didn't. That's a lot of knowledge. And not only will he know that, he will be able to look within the recesses of your soul where nobody else can look, maybe not even yourself, and he will know you better than you know yourself. And he's going to be wonderful. He's going to be great. He's going to be awesome. And this next description, that he will be called Mighty God. In Hebrew, the word mighty doesn't just mean powerful. It means hero. Like Jesus, this is a description of him if you didn't know. Jesus was the original Avenger. Like he was greater than Thanos. Greater than Captain Marvel, okay? This Jesus was a hero. He is a hero. He is going to be all-powerful. There's nobody that can match up to his heroic power that he's going to wield. And this individual, too, is going to be called Everlasting Father. And right here, if this is kind of like a Bible nerd nugget for some of you that like this kind of stuff, it's kind of a glimpse that we get of hinting about the Trinity before anybody even knew what it was. It kind of reminds us of when Jesus says that I and the Father are one. God is one, but he is triune in his nature. He is three distinct persons. And he will be everlasting. In other words, this individual, this king, will not be bound to the confinements of time or space. He will be spaceless. He will be timeless. He has always existed from beginning to the end, from infinity to infinity. He's always existed. And by the way, he's going to be the Prince of Peace. Okay, his main goal is going to be to bring peace. And if he's God's representative to us, that means he's going to bring peace between us and God. I don't know about you. I would love to have a ruler like this. Would you love to have a manager like this or a boss like this? Wouldn't you, you work at Starbucks, you want your shift manager to be the Prince of Peace or Princess of Peace, whatever. Would you love it if we had like a governor, a senator, a representative, a president, whoever like that? Whatever country you live in. But Isaiah goes on here in the first part of verse 7. He says, of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne, which is another way that they saw that this was messianic, because whoever this representative was that God would send one day was supposed to come from David's lineage. So he would reign from David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing it and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. I mean, this is huge, okay? That he's got to be God, that if there's no end to his kingdom. And by the way, not only is this individual a wonderful counselor, not only is he mighty God, not only is he everlasting and peace-oriented, but he is interested in righteousness, which is literally right living or character and integrity, trustworthiness, but also justice, that he sees the injustice. And one day he's going to do something about it. And by the way, if you're not a Christian, here's a reason why you might want to consider being one. Following Jesus, you can see that he's already doing something about it, even right now. And why does he do this? Look at the end of verse 7. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. The word zeal in Hebrew there, it literally means passion. That he's passionate about doing it. He doesn't just do it because he said he'd do it. He does it because he's passionate about the world. He's passionate about people. He is passionate about righteousness and justice and peace and power and heroic deeds. He is passionate about knowing you and knowing the very depths of you like nobody else ever could. He is passionate about it. And it says that this is the passion. This is the reason why he would do it. The passion of the Lord Almighty, literally in Hebrew, the Lord of heavenly armies. The God of heavenly armies. The one that's going to take out the Assyrians and the one that's going to discipline his people but bring them back. He's going to do this, and he's going to send somebody that's going to make sure that there will never have to be another woodshed moment again. I don't know about you, but this excites me. If you want to get kind of a description of what God's face and expression looks like, look at Isaiah 9, 6 through 7. If you want to get a description of how God looks, okay, he looks just like that. His face is that of a counselor, of somebody who has control, of somebody who has a father's love, and of somebody who has complete peace. You see, Christmas shows us that description. Christmas shows us what God looks like. Okay? If you want a description of God, look at Isaiah 9, 6 through 7, because it points to what God looks like. But if you want to see the exact face of God, that's Jesus. You see, because God looks just like Jesus. That's one of the things that Christmas does. Christmas reveals to us what the face of God looks like. That's powerful. Nobody's ever seen the face of God until that moment. And as a matter of fact, all throughout the New Testament, you have verses like in Hebrews where it says that Jesus is the exact representation of God. You have verses like John 14, verse 9, where Jesus says, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. Seeing Jesus is seeing God. You want to know what God would do in a situation? Look and see what Jesus did. You see, remember how I said that, they were expecting the Messiah to come as a warrior and is in charge, and he's going to vanquish everything, and he's going to do everything that Isaiah 9, 6 through 7 says. And then you can look at other verses like Isaiah 11, 1 through 10, where it says he's going to vanquish the enemies and everything like that. And how does Jesus come? He's homeless. He's in a trough, born outside. He's like, there's stank going on all over the place. In a field. Like in the back of a guest house or something. And Pastor Rob's going to talk more about that next week. But and that's why so many people are like, okay, that's not what Isaiah says. That's not this. And yet we know from being on this side of the cross, we know that one day all you have to do is open up Revelation, right? And you see what Isaiah is talking about here. You see some of these descriptions. You're like, yeah, buddy, that's what I'm talking about. We need Revelation right now. But you see, in order to even get there, you have to see what God looks like. And he looks just like Jesus. In the times when you are upset this holiday season, in the times when you're frustrated, when you don't have enough in your account, when the relationship is going down the tube, when it just feels like that wound from the past will never get better, when you're in an ambiguous season and you don't know where God has taken you, and you keep on asking him, and it doesn't seem like he's interested, or it seems like he's doing other things, you can remember that if you want that kind of fulfillment, if you want to look at God, and you want to know that he is near, open up one of the stories about Jesus. Luke 2, Luke 1, open up Matthew chapter 1 and read it and read about the things that Jesus did, because Jesus looks just like God. And he reminds you that God will never leave you. Okay? How do we do that? I mean, Jesus looks just like God, but how do we do that? How do we keep on looking at him, okay? Well, the first thing I would say to do is this, okay? Remember that your current circumstances never indicate God's absence or indifference. Your current circumstances, whatever it is that you have gone through or are going through right now, your circumstances are not an indicator of how God feels about you, of what God thinks about you. They do not indicate his absence or indifference. You see, and many of us, a lot of times, we can feel that way a lot. You ever felt that way? You ever felt like one season, you and God are just like this? I've had it before. I've been there. Like Jesus and I are like, yeah, buddy, you and me, we're going to charge the gates together. And then the next morning I wake up and I'm like, God isn't there anymore. Where did he go? Or something happens and the hits keep on coming, one after another, after another, after another. And you're like, where is God? Don't you think the God's people felt like this when they were being disciplined? And they're like, man, where is God? Why is God not showing up? Why is he not doing his thing? I'm waiting for God to do something and to show up. But we got to remember that God's absence is never his indifference. Or that what we interpret, sorry, I said that wrong. What we interpret as God's silence is never his indifference, and it's certainly not his absence. Now, I'm going to make a controversial statement here, and Rob can correct it next week. But I'm still going to say it, okay? I hate coffee. Yeah, calm down. I hate coffee. Like, for instance, if you wanted to take death and turn it into a drink, it would be coffee, okay? If you want to know what evil tastes like, drink coffee. And some of you are like, oh, evil tastes good. It's because you're addicted to evil. That's okay. Okay, I don't. I love hot tea. Seriously, I do. We have all different kinds of hot tea in our pantry. We have I love peach tea. I love raspberry. I love all different kinds of teas. And I used to not even check the box until one day when, my wife Amy, she has all these different teas, and I just grabbed one and didn't even know what it was, drank it, and I thought it was good. Drank another one and looked on the box and it said laxative tea, and that was a whole experience and another story for another Sunday. However, I've learned to read boxes since then, descriptions. But at the same time, I'll tell you this, I love hot tea because I love all the different flavors, and I love putting the tea in the hot water, because the longer you keep it in there, the more it brings out the flavors. You want to know why some of the time God leaves you in the hot water and he's 500% okay with not answering your questions? Because he wants to bring out your faith. How better to bring out your faith than to make you wait? Than to let you rest in ambiguity and see that you have to have your total dependence on him? You remember back in school, and I know for some of you, you're in school now, so you can definitely remember, and for some of you, that was back when God was a boy. But if you remember back in school, when you would take a test, it would be silent in the classroom, right? But the teacher was always still there. You see, even when we think that God is silent, he's not. Even when we think that God is indifferent, trust me, he's working. And God does some of his best work when we think he's not there. Amen. God never stops working in your life. Let me throw this at you. God was working in your life before you were even born. Amen. Okay? So you've got to remember that this description of God right here in Isaiah 9, 6 through 7, this description of Jesus, and Christmas shows us that God is with us and that he will never leave us. Now, remember how I said there's one reason why it might be a good reason to become Christian? Here's a reason why you may never want to become a Christian. And I'm just going to throw it out there, and Rob's like, what is that? Here it is, okay? If you want to become a Christian, Jesus never promises your circumstances will get better. He never promises you money. He never promises that he's going to heal you. He never promises that your suffering is going to cease. He never promises that your mental issues will go away. And some of that we need to take responsibility for, but some of that we may need to live with depending on the circumstances, okay? God never promises that. But you want to know, actually, here's the thing. God does promise, and Jesus says this, if the world hates me, it'll hate you. People won't make fun of you because of me. So there's a selling point to become a Christian. But here's the greatest promise. And this is what Christmas reminds us of. Okay? The one promise we can count on is that God said, I will always be with you. I will never, never leave. When we are in a relationship together, when you become my son, when you become my daughter, I don't go anywhere. No matter what. And I'm not saying that God doesn't do things sometimes and gets us out of situations and gives us things. No, he does. But the one thing you can count on God is that he will never leave you. Which makes this next point of what we need to do so important, okay? If you want to see God's face this Christmas, if you want to remember to look at Jesus when everything is making you turn this way, okay? I want you to focus on what you know is true, not what you feel is true. I want you to focus on what you know to be true, not what you feel to be true. Do you know how paramount that is? Do you know that when Israel was in trouble and when they finally did get their whooping from God for going away from him and they watched the Assyrians get wiped out, they think they're getting wiped out and they think, okay, God's done with us. He's moved on. Do you know why God had Isaiah preach these things and write some of these things down? Because when his people were in a time of captivity, he wanted them to go back through the scrolls and to read verses like this, and he wanted them to see that even though you may feel I've gone away, you can know what I said, and I said that I will not leave. See, here's the thing. I love what Pastor Andy Stanley says. He's a pastor at North Point Church in Atlanta. He says that emotions are great followers, but they are horrible leaders. Now, I don't know about you, but in my life, the times in my life when I've made the biggest mistakes and when I've done things and said things I wish I could go and undo, I would say almost 99% of the time, I was being led by my feelings instead of my logic. And I'm not saying that logic can't be flawed, but I'm saying we get in more trouble when we let our emotions lead everything we do instead of our feelings. Okay? Because here's the deal. You can't trust your feelings. Your feelings are jacked. You may or may not know that. You're like, Caleb, I don't believe that's true. Sure it is. Here's the deal. In your head, who do you talk to yourself about? What person do you talk to yourself about the most? Yourself. Think about that. You talk to yourself about yourself the most. Who do you lie to yourself the most about? Yourself. You lie to yourself about yourself a lot. And there are some of you, you lie to yourself and your thoughts and you let your emotions control you, and you lie to yourself about yourself, and you end up taking the blame for everything that's ever happened because you think somehow that's going to stabilize your emotions, make everything better. No, it makes you feel worse. And there are others of you, you're so afraid of taking responsibility that you do the blame thing, and you just don't think you have to take any responsibility, and you become a narcissist. So how in the world can we trust what you feel? You don't even know you. You don't know you that well. You can't even interpret what you should do in every situation. That's why, to be the most self-aware, we need people outside of our lives speaking into our lives, because I can't see myself in the way that you can. And you can't see yourself in the way other people can see you. You see, in the times when you feel like God's wandered away, like he's doing something else, and you're begging him when you look at your Bank of America account to just move that decimal point over 5 spaces, you're like, I'm not asking for a Red Sea parting. This is not going to zap a lot of your energy, God. Just, a couple. This is like a text message for you, God. And he doesn't do it. When you're asking for God to help that person not show up for Christmas and they do, when you're asking for that promotion or that bonus, or when you think you're not being recognized and you want to be recognized at work and it doesn't happen, and you're like, God, I am measuring your love by what I get or what I don't get, you're being led by your feelings. You're not being led by what you know. In those moments, if you want to see the face of God, you need to train yourself to know that when you feel your emotions boiling up, you need to open up your Bible, read verses like Isaiah 9, 6-7, or go and start flipping through the Gospels, and you start looking at the things that Jesus did and hearing the things that Jesus said. Because in those moments, if you want to know God's faithfulness, if you want to know what God thinks about you, if you want to remember his promises, you've got to go back. And you have got to look at what Jesus did, because he is the clearest picture of what God's face looks like in any circumstance you are facing. Amen. You see, God looks just like Jesus. If you want to see what God looks like, when you're not sure what to do, when life isn't going your way, and you want to see what he looks like, you need to look at Jesus. And trust me, there's a hope that you can cling on to. And I want to read this to you. I love how Eugene Peterson, he was this pastor and this really brilliant Christian thinker who wrote this paraphrase that some of you have read called The Message. It's not an exact translation, but it's a paraphrase. And I love how he paraphrased Isaiah 9, verse 7. Take a look at this right here. He says, Jesus, his ruling authority will grow, and there will be no limits to the wholeness he brings. He will rule from the historic David throne over that promised kingdom. and he will put that kingdom on firm footing and keep it going with fair dealing and right living, beginning now and lasting always. You want to see this again? I'll give you full permission to read the end of the story. Go back to Revelation 21, verses 3 through 5, where God describes what the end will be like, what the new heavens and the new earth, what the redeemed world will be like, and what redeemed life will be like. And he says one day there will be no more crying or mourning or death or pain. Why? Because the old order of things has passed away. And one day that will happen. But until that day, you can look at Jesus. Because Isaiah and verses in the Old Testament like that, they give us a description of God's face, but Jesus gives us a perfect picture of God's face. And that gives us hope. And next week, Pastor Rob is going to pick up where I left off, and he's going to talk about hope. Let me pray for you. Lord, thank you so much for this time. Thank you so much, Lord, that we do have hope because of what you've given us, because of Christmas, that Christmas can bring different emotions because of what we've been through, what we're going through. But Father, it's my prayer that this Christmas, that during the times of ambiguity and uncertainty, during the times when we're not sure what to do, we can remember that you showed us your face a long time ago, and that we still have a perfect picture of that face captured in the life of Jesus. And I pray that we will not give in to the lie that you've left us or you don't care anymore. I pray that we will learn how to focus on what we know to be true, not the lies we feel are true, that we will remember to open up our Bible and we will remember to read about Jesus when we need to see what you will do, what you have done, and how much you love us. That's what Christmas is all about. And that's one of the things that I love about Christmas. It's in your Son's name I pray. Amen.